Uh-huh. What do you mean? John, I know. What do you mean you want out of the deal? Listen, we already signed the contract. Everything's good to go. And I just don't understand this coming out of the blue. What's going on? Ugh. What would you do if your seller calls you and backs out of the contract? Guys, my name is Rick Ginn with Flip with Rick. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what to do when your seller calls you to back out of the contract and how to save the deal and how to prevent this from happening in the future. But listen, before I get started, do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And my goal is to have you profitable doing wholesaling without paying the big gurus. So let's talk about it. What do you do if your seller calls you to back out? It's going to happen to you. I repeat, this happens to every wholesaler. If you haven't had someone call to back out of a deal, it means you have not done enough deals yet. So what's the first thing you do? Don't panic. Actually, you have to do the opposite than panic. You have to be cool and calm and deal with it and go through a systematic process to save your deal. So if you know it's going to happen to you and you're not going to panic, you'll enjoy the rest of this video. So I've gotten calls like that. I can't even tell you how many times. And today in this current market, it happens all the time. It's natural. It happens. So let's talk about it. So number one, we're not going to panic and we're going to expect a certain amount of deals like this to get phone calls like that. So after you don't panic, let's move forward. So once you realize you don't have to panic and you're going to get through this, the next thing I need you to do is when you're talking to your seller on that phone like that, you're going to immediately set up a face-to-face meeting. I repeat, your job when they call you to try to back out of a contract is to instantly set up a follow-up meeting, the sooner the better, and get in your car and get over there and meet with them face-to-face. Do not, under any circumstance, try to salvage the deal over the phone. They are just going to get out of the contract even more. Why do you say this? Because in my experience doing this 18 years, when I do this face-to-face meeting, it gives me the upper hand to deal with them. And I'm going to walk through why. So when you're in front of them, you get to see their eyes. You can see if there's tears in their eyes. You can see if there's somebody else influencing them. You can see so much. If they're on the phone, you're at a complete disadvantage. There can be somebody on the other side of that phone coaching them through exactly what to say, what to do. You can't see their facial expressions. You can't see their arms. The only thing you can hear is the words and the tonality. And in my opinion, that puts you at a disadvantage. So we don't panic. Number two, you want to get a face-to-face meeting. As bad as you want to try to save that deal over the phone, and it would seem the most prudent way to do it, it's actually the worst in my experience. Because when you meet people in person, you're going to have the ability to walk through your contract, talk to them, and remind them why you did the deal in the first place. People have a tendency to avoid saying no to you in person when they've already committed to a deal. Put them on the phone. It's so easy to back out of something on the phone. So we didn't panic, set up the face-to-face, and resist that urge to try to save the deal over the phone. Get over there, meet them sooner, and this is going to give you a high probability to save the deal. So now you're in front of your seller. What do we do? This is actually the really easy part. Breathe, listen to what they have to say, and hear what's going on. And you'll quickly be able to identify what the real issue is. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to let them speak. And then what I'm going to do is walk them through the terms of the deal. So when we have a contract with a seller, obviously bring the contract with you. It's kind of a no-brainer. Because I'm going to walk through and say, John, like, remember we talked about the reason you're selling is this. You know, you want to move to North Carolina to be next to your sister. And you thought with the repairs in the property, you didn't want to deal with the hassle of putting it on the market, having people parade through your house. And we agreed to buy the house for $100,000. And then remember, I let you pick the date of your choice of closing. What part of this agreement is bothering you? And I like using that terminology because you're just reassuring them and stepping through. And if you did your sales process right, you should be able to salvage the deal. So first thing is be a good listener. God gave you 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use it accordingly. Do not sit there and step over them. Make sure you hear them out. Take the visual and verbal cues they give you. The next step is reaffirm your contract with them. Walk through it step by step. Obviously, you guys came to an agreement and you just want to re-solidify it. The biggest part is when I'm done going over the contract, I'm going to go back to their why are they selling the property. Our sellers always have a reason they sell the property. That's why we usually get a great deal. And we want to remind them, the reason you're selling the property, John, is to be closer to your family because this property is a headache. You can't deal with your neighbors, you can't deal with your roommate, and you thought it would be best to sell, take the proceeds, and move on with your life. Once they re-agree to it, they walk through their thought pattern, it's now going to come to the moment of truth. The next section is we have to identify what the real problem is here. And in my 18 years experience writing thousands and thousands of contracts and buying well over 1,500 homes, I boiled it down to basically 3 classifications of why someone's going to back out of a contract. And once you can classify and get to the real truth during this face-to-face meeting, in my opinion, it's really easy to salvage the deal. So first thing before we start identifying the 3 factors is you have to understand the timeline. So the biggest thing when a seller wants to back out of the contracts, your biggest risk as a wholesaler is the first 72 hours. In that first 72 hours, which is basically the first 3 days, you want to do everything to make sure that contract is locked in. So if you said you're going to leave a deposit, leave a deposit. If you said you were going to leave a $500 deposit, show your $500 deposit. If you told them the title company is going to reach out to them and get your information, make sure that happens. Use that first 3 days to reconnect. You are going to follow through on your deal and build rapport. So in those first 3 days, my recommendation to you is to contact them a minimum of once a day to protect your interest, because if they try to back out in the first 72 hours, it's not a good sign, and those are much harder to keep together. After 72 hours, the odds of them backing out of the deal, unless you do something crazy, are very low. So if you understand you're at risk for 72 hours, make sure you contact them every day. Even if you don't have a reason to call them, call them. Hey, John, just want to check up on you, see if you had any other questions about the contract. I'm excited that you can move forward with it, and I'm here if you have any questions. Keeping that open line of communications is going to prevent that out of the blue sucker phone call saying, hey, I want out of the contract. So once you get past that first 72 hours and you manage it, you still need to keep in contact with them, the title company. This is part of your follow-up routine. I want you to protect that first 72 hours because if you can prevent that phone call in the first 72 hours, you're in really, really good shape. So say they called after that 72 hours and you got that phone call out of the blue. So we were meeting with them. So now we've met with them. We hear them out. We go over the terms of the contract, and then we've gone and reaffirmed their why. So at this point, you now have to identify one of the 3 reasons they're backed out. So number 1, which is a common one, is they're just scared. So if you've ever been scared of something, it's just easier to get out of the deal to unwind that anxiety and fear. It is normal for sellers to have anxiety and fear because I know a lot of these people have been in the house 15, 20. I've had a house where I've had people in it over 40 years. So one of the ways to really get people settled down on it is you have to settle their fear of the unknown. So most of them have, hey, Rick, moving is really hard. I get it. How many times have you moved? It sucks. I hate moving. It's just exhausting. It's physically exhausting. It's mentally exhausting. And you got to reaffirm them. Like sometimes they just don't want to move. And I get that all the time. So we recommend local movers. We show them how to get moving companies and things to make their assistance. Sometimes we provide it if we're getting a good enough deal, not a requirement. So understanding that is their fear. Their other fear is like, where are they moving to? So this is part is if you know they were going to move to live with their sister in North Carolina, then that probably hasn't changed unless something changed in their family. So sometimes people are just scared. And one of the fear factors in moving is they need to find a place to live. So back to when we deal with our sellers, when it comes to a contract, always find out where they are moving to if you buy their house. Why? Because if they haven't made plans to move, the odds of you buying the house are slim. Or even if you enter in a contract and they don't understand it's actually going to cost them more to buy a new house, they're going to back out of your deal. If you get someone under contract and then they start calling a realtor to find out a rental or something like that, and they find out that the house they're selling used for $100,000, for them just to downsize into a smaller house, it's going to cost them $200,000, then that's something that's a real fear factor, and you're probably not going to be able to beat it, and you need to fix your sales process and ask them where they're moving to. Every now and then, some people just want to stay in their home. There's a change of a family event, and if that's the truth and they're sincerely staying in the house, you can verify the story, then there's nothing you can do about that. And it will happen every now and then. Just be a human being and move on and wish them the best and let them know if anything ever changes, you'll be here to buy their house. And they'll usually be very happy to hear that, but that's very rare. So sellers scared. You just have to find out what they're scared of. Sometimes people are just scared. Your job is to walk them through that process. The fear of the unknown is what you need to manage. The second factor is, if they're not scared or they're already scared, is the third-party influencer. And you guys know what I mean. Who's a third-party influencer? A realtor got into them. Oh, I can get you more. Maybe another investor, as they can do so much more for them. The biggest objection we get is usually going to be family and neighbors. And these people have a huge influence on their life. And a lot of times they'll say, well, if I knew you're going to sell that, I would have bought it from you. So I call this the FOMO factor on the third-party influencers. The neighbor says, I can go ahead and buy that house. If you're going to sell it to them $100,000, I'll just buy it from you for like $105,000. Well, that's very simple. Just walk them through and ask if the neighbor would give a proof of funds, and do you already have a contract from them, and how are they going to pay for a house if they already own the one next door them? In my 18 years, I have never, ever once had the neighbor buy the house. It's just a fact. They never do it. So identify who's getting in their head. Once you know if it's a realtor, sometimes it's a lawyer, like fear. Once again, once these identifiers come up, then you can go back to their why and why they're moving. And most of their fears or their reservations are complete myths, and your job is to teach them to overcome it. The realtor wants to list your house. That's great. I know they think they can get more money, but keep in mind the realtor's not buying your house. And remember the repairs on your house, and you said you don't have the money to make them, and you don't want to pay the closing costs, you don't want to pay the realtor fees, and you want people trampling through your house, and you want to get this done in the next few weeks. I don't know for the life of me how the realtor is going to be able to solve that for you. Remember why we did this deal. And then most of the times you can calm them down and walk them off the ledge. So the third one is the one that's been a lot more common lately. So whenever you have a really tight market, when inventory is low and prices are high, it's called the greed factor. And the greed factor simply says they enter in a contract with you and, hey, another investor called me and said he's going to offer me more. And to me, it's the most frustrating part, because I think a contract binds people's words. I wish we could just do everything on a handshake, but we can't. The greed factor is basically they want more. They're asking you to up your bid. The problem here is if you up your bid, in my experience, it never stops. They're going to call you all the way up to closing and keep asking you for more money. Every now and then you have to go up a few bucks, and I get it. So maybe you have to go up a couple thousand. So a lot of times I'll do this. If I have a really good deal, and guys, remember, if you have to pull out a calculator to figure out if you can buy the house or not, you're paying too much for it. But if you know you have a big spread on the house, offer them, if you have to, offer them a little bit more money. And I don't do this every time, but only ones on big spread. And then basically reaffirm your contract and make sure they're committed, they're 100% signed, and let them know that there is no backing out of this contract. We're locked in. Does this make you happy? Can we move forward? They go, yes. That gives me enough money to get a moving truck and all this, and just be the hero. So, but if they're asking $10,000, $15,000 already tight deal, you can't do it. So the problem is when the greed factor comes up, the sellers will usually lie to you at any cost, and then you're going to have to heed the warning, because nothing coming out of their mouth is the truth at that point. So we've identified the 3 different types of classifications. And a seller contacts you and wants to back out. So let's talk about the actionable steps if they want to back out. And guys, keep in mind, I am not a lawyer, and you really need to consult a real estate lawyer if you're going to do any type of legal action. That includes any type of recording. So, number one, common sense, try to work with the seller. A face-to-face, a belly-to-belly meeting works the best. Do not try to hash this out over the phone. Next thing you do is you're going to identify the real issue. It's either 3 issues I shared with you. Once you can classify them, it's much easier to address and deal with the objection of hand. Are they just scared? Is it a third-party influencer, or is it greed? So once we identify it, after you overcome the objection, you are now going to reassert your position on your contract. I entered into a contract with you. I'm fully bona fide to close. We have an agreement, and I'm going to live up my end of the bargain. And then that's when they're going to tell you if they're going to live up to the end of the bargain. At this time, you've given them enough information to overcome the objection. So worst case scenario, they say, it's usually the greed factor where they go, well, if you don't pay me $15,000 more, I'm getting out of the contract. At that point, I remind them, I'm not giving up my interest in the contract. We have an agreement. You can't just get out of the contract. It doesn't work. Well, I'm not going to close. You know what? I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do to help you overcome it? So at that point, you try to leave on a good note, but you reaffirm that you're moving forward with the contract. At this point, and this is critical, you need to contact a real estate lawyer. Do not try to do this stuff on your own, and consult them. And at that point, you have a decision to make. You can try to enforce the contract. The most typical way people try to enforce contract is to record something in the public record saying you have an interest in the property. I'm going to be honest with you. Do not do that without consulting a real estate lawyer. There is massive risk when you do that. You can be sued for defamation of title. You also have to understand you have to perfect the contract, meaning you have to prove you left a deposit, meaning you have to have an escrow letter that's dated for that day, for the time of the contract. You have to show you have the intent to close on the property. If you don't, this is going to get you in serious trouble. You have to show you did your due diligence in pulling the title and showing up by the expiration of the contract. Every now and then you do have to do that because maybe another wholesaler is trying to go around you or a realtor is trying to list it. But remember, try to always work with the homeowner and understanding, guys, don't panic. It happens to everybody. I've yet to meet anybody in the real estate business, specifically wholesaling, that this hasn't happened to it. So have a game plan of action. And it's simple. It's don't panic. Meet with the seller face to face. Do not try to fix this over the phone. Listen to them. Hear them out. Go over your contract. Reaffirm their why of why they're doing the contract, because you should have great rapport at that point. And then from there, you want to identify which factor it is why they want to get a contract. Are they just scared? Is it a third-party influencer, or is it 100% greed? And then from there, you're going to try to talk sense into them and let them know you're asserting your position on the contract. It takes 2 people to exit out of the contract. And then if your conversation doesn't get better or it goes worse, you need to contact your real estate lawyer, because this is where they're worth their weight in gold. And then you can make a decision on what you want to do. If it's legal action, if it's simply recording something. But guys, do not record an affidavit without getting legal consult. This can get you in trouble, and it's something that you cannot erase on public record. So guys, this is it. If a seller calls you to back out of the contract, do not panic. It happens. It seems to happen more frequently than it did in the past. But if your intentions are correct and you want to help people out, and you want to buy the house and you're solving a problem, 9 times out of 10, you can fix this. Just don't try to fix it over the phone. So guys, if you like this video, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit that subscribe button. Give me your feedback. What do you agree with? Make sure you do the right thing. Just recording an affidavit it's much more complex than that. So I hope this helps everybody out, and I can remove your fear and anxiety when you get that phone call. It's not a matter of if, it's just when. So guys, this is Rick with Flip with Rick, and I'll see you real soon.